Have you ever stopped to think that everything we see, feel, and experience might not be real? The theory that we're living in a virtual simulation isn't just the stuff of science fiction anymore, it's a serious hypothesis being considered by scientists and philosophers around the world. In this video, we're going to dive into this fascinating idea, breaking down 10 pieces of evidence that suggest our reality might just be a complex computer program. 1. Physics and metaphysics. The idea that the universe began with the Big Bang is widely accepted by the scientific community, but it still leaves a lot of unanswered questions. If everything came from a single explosion, what existed before it? And why do the laws of physics work so precisely and uniformly across the entire cosmos? These questions have led some to wonder if the universe might have been programmed to function so perfectly, as if we're living inside a sophisticated simulation where every particle and force has been intentionally set up. Quantum physics adds even more fuel to this fire. One of the most intriguing experiments, the double-slit experiment, suggests that subatomic particles can exist in multiple states at once until they're observed. This raises the possibility that reality only solidifies when it's being observed, almost as if it's being rendered in real time, like in a video game or computer simulation. These quirks of physics don't easily align with our traditional understanding of the physical world, leading some to believe they could be signs of a simulated reality. If the universe is just a vast and complex piece of software, these anomalies might be the equivalent of glitches or bugs that occur in imperfect simulations, hinting at the artificial nature of our existence. On the other hand, many scientists argue that these interpretations are a bit of a stretch, and we still have a lot to learn about how the universe works. But the idea that we might be living in a programmed reality continues to captivate and intrigue, especially in light of the strange properties that govern the quantum world. 2. The simulation argument. Nick Bostrom, a renowned philosopher, presented what's known as the simulation argument, a thought-provoking challenge to our perception of reality. He suggests that one of three propositions must be true: either humanity will go extinct before reaching a technological level capable of creating realistic simulations, or humanity will reach that level but decide not to create such simulations, or, we're most likely already living in an existing simulation. The implications of these three possibilities are profound and raise unsettling questions about our very existence. If we consider the first possibility to be false, that humanity won't go extinct before developing advanced technology, then we're left with two options. The second possibility, that humanity would choose not to create realistic simulations, seems unlikely given our history of curiosity and innovation. If we also dismiss this possibility, then we're left with the third, which is the most alarming: we're living in a simulation. This line of reasoning suggests that our reality, with all its complexities and nuances, might just be an illusion created by a highly advanced civilization. Additionally, the idea that we're already living in a simulation is supported by the possibility that an advanced civilization could create an infinite number of simulations, each one with conscious beings who believe they're living in a real reality. If that's possible, then statistically, the chances that we're in the original simulation and not one of those countless others are incredibly slim. This means Bostrom's hypothesis doesn't just make us question our existence, it suggests that simulation might be a much more likely reality than we ever imagined. This line of thinking, while fascinating, is also unsettling. If we are living in a simulation, what could be the motivations of the creators? And how does that impact our understanding of free will, morality, and purpose? The implications are vast, and there's still so much to explore, but the idea that we might be part of some cosmic experiment or game is one of the most provocative theories in modern philosophy. 3. Glitches and simulation effects. Many of us have experienced strange sensations, like déjà vu, where we feel like we've lived a situation before, or have heard about the Mandela effect, where large groups of people remember events differently than how they actually happened. These phenomena, mysterious as they are, can be seen as glitches or errors in a simulated reality. If we are indeed living in a simulation, these inconsistencies might be programming errors or system flaws that reveal the artificial nature of the world around us. The Mandela effect, in particular, is an intriguing example of how our collective memory can be inaccurate, or perhaps how reality can be altered within a simulation. The term comes from a situation where many people believed Nelson Mandela had died in prison in the 1980s, when in fact, he was released and later became president of South Africa. There are other examples, like subtle changes in logos, brand names, or even historical events, that seem to be remembered differently by large groups of people. These phenomena raise the possibility that our reality could be subject to alterations that we don't notice, unless something goes wrong. Déjà vu, for example, could be interpreted as a minor error in the system, where an event is processed twice, causing a sense of familiarity. These glitches, in reality, often dismissed as coincidences or memory lapses, might actually be clues that our reality isn't as solid as we think. Of course, these phenomena can also be explained by psychological processes, like confabulation or memory errors. However, the idea that these strange events might be signs of a simulated reality is intriguing and prompts us to question the true nature of the world we live in. If our reality were a simulation, what else might be manipulated or distorted without us noticing? 4. Limitations of science and technology. When we look at the advancements in modern technology, like the creation of increasingly realistic video game graphics, it's not hard to imagine a future where humanity could create simulations so perfect they become indistinguishable from reality. However, these simulations don't have to be perfect, just good enough to fool the senses of the participants. The current technological limitations show that we're still far from simulating an entire universe, but they also suggest that, with time, we may overcome these obstacles. Today, computer graphics can create virtual environments that, in certain situations, are almost indistinguishable from reality. In video games and movies, the line between what's real and what's digital is becoming increasingly blurred. If we project this trend into the future, we could create complex simulations capable of replicating not just visual aspects but also the laws of physics, human behavior, and even consciousness. This makes us wonder if, in a distant future, these simulations could become so realistic that the beings within them would have no idea they're living in a virtual world. On the flip side, the current limitations of science and technology also raise questions about the feasibility of simulating an entire universe. The computing power required to create a simulation of this scale would be astronomical, demanding resources far beyond anything we can imagine today. However, if an advanced enough civilization wanted to create a simulation, they might have developed technologies so advanced that they seem magical or unimaginable to us. The possibility that we're living in a simulation becomes even more unsettling when we consider the continuous advancement of technology. If we can one day create simulations indistinguishable from reality, what's stopping us from believing that this hasn't already been done before and that we ourselves are part of one of these creations? These questions push us to reflect on the limits of our own technology and how far we might eventually go. 5. Evidence and refutations of the simulation theory. The theory that we live in a virtual simulation is tough to prove or disprove, but there are certain phenomena and experiments that could be interpreted as evidence of this possibility. Some scientists and philosophers argue that if we're living in a simulation, there should be ways to detect it, like finding artifacts in the universe that don't make sense within the laws of physics or mathematics as we know them. These anomalies could be seen as programming errors or limitations of the simulation. One example of this would be the search for irregularities in universal constants, like the speed of light or gravity. If these values were slightly different under certain conditions, it could suggest that the simulation is trying to correct errors or maintain the cohesion of the simulated universe. Additionally, the discovery of logical or mathematical paradoxes that cannot be resolved within our current understanding could also be viewed as indirect proof that reality is simulated. On the other hand, many scientists argue that the lack of concrete evidence against the simulation theory doesn't mean we're living in one. Science is based on observation and experimentation, and so far, there's no conclusive proof supporting the simulation hypothesis. Moreover, Some attempts to refute the theory rely on the idea that any simulation we could detect would, by definition, be imperfect, meaning that if the simulation is perfect, we could never prove its existence. Even so, the theory continues to capture people's imaginations. Even without definitive evidence, the idea that our reality could be a simulation raises profound questions about the nature of knowledge, perception, and the very meaning of existence. If we ever do find evidence pointing to a simulation, it would revolutionize our understanding of the universe and our place within it. 6. The Fermi paradox and the absence of extraterrestrial life. The Fermi paradox questions why, in a universe as vast and ancient as ours, we haven't yet found clear signs of extraterrestrial life. If life is common in the universe, we should have evidence of advanced civilization somewhere. One proposed explanation is that we live in a simulation designed to focus solely on humanity, leaving the rest of the universe empty or lacking detail. This could explain the absence of signals from other civilizations. This idea suggests that the simulation we live in doesn't need to create a fully detailed universe in every aspect. Instead, it could just render the parts of the universe that directly interact with humanity, thereby saving computational resources. If this is true, then the absence of extraterrestrial life might be an intentional limitation of the simulation, keeping the focus on our own species. Another interpretation is that if the universe is a simulation, the creators might have chosen not to include other forms of intelligent life to avoid complications or because the purpose of the simulation is to study human behavior exclusively. This would lead us to consider the possibility that we are the centerpiece of a cosmic experiment, isolated in a sandbox where we're the only conscious inhabitants. Although these ideas are purely speculative, they offer an intriguing explanation for the Fermi paradox. If the lack of extraterrestrial life is indeed a sign that we're in a simulation, it raises questions about the purpose of the simulation and who or what might be observing us. Until we can explore more of the universe or find evidence of other civilizations, this hypothesis remains in the realm of theory, but it continues to fascinate scientists and philosophers alike. 7. Patterns and mathematics in nature. The presence of recurring mathematical patterns in nature, such as the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio, suggests that the universe follows an underlying logic that could be likened to the programming of software. These patterns appear in surprising places, from the structure of galaxies to the shape of seashells and the arrangement of leaves on a plant, leading some to question whether this could be evidence of a programming behind our reality. The Fibonacci sequence, for example, can be seen in various natural structures, like the growth of trees, the arrangement of petals on a flower, and even in patterns of animal reproduction. This kind of recurrence might indicate that there is an underlying logic governing how nature organizes itself, similar to an algorithm that determines the evolution and development of life forms and structures in the universe. The golden ratio, a mathematical constant that appears in various natural forms and is often associated with beauty and harmony, is another example that could be interpreted as a clue that reality is programmed. If the universe follows these mathematical rules so closely, it could suggest that these rules were intentionally coded, just as a programmer sets the parameters of software. While traditional science views these patterns as manifestations of natural laws that emerged through evolution and natural selection, the simulation theory offers an alternative perspective. These patterns might be the source code of our reality. If that's the case, the presence of these patterns could be a sign that we're living in a simulated universe, where the laws of mathematics and physics are the programmed guidelines that govern the behavior of everything that exists. 8. The connection between simulation and divinity. The idea that we live in a simulation has intriguing parallels with religious concepts, particularly the notion of a creator or God. If our reality was created by an advanced civilization, these creators could be seen as gods, with the power to manipulate and control our existence. This raises questions about the purpose of the simulation and the nature of the beings who created it. In many religions, God is viewed as the creator of everything, an omnipotent entity who designed the universe and the laws that govern it. The simulation theory suggests something similar, that an entity or group of entities with technology beyond our comprehension created our reality for a specific purpose. This comparison leads to questions about free will, the purpose of life, and even morality if we are indeed living in a simulated reality. Furthermore, if we are in a simulation, the idea of an afterlife or reincarnation could be explained as a reset or continuation within the system, where souls or consciousnesses could be transferred or replicated in different simulations or instances. This offers a new perspective on spiritual beliefs and might even provide a scientific justification for phenomena that have traditionally been considered purely religious. However, this line of thought also sparks controversy. Accepting the idea that we live in a simulation could weaken or even replace traditional religious beliefs by reinterpreting the concept of God as a cosmic programmer. This reinterpretation could be seen as an attempt to bridge science and spirituality, or as a threat to traditional religious structures. Either way, the comparison between simulation and divinity challenges both science and religion to rethink their views on the origin and nature of reality. 9. The nature of reality and simulation. The simulation theory raises a central question: what is reality? If we're living in a simulation, then our perception of reality is, at best, a carefully crafted illusion. This challenges the idea that we can know or understand the world around us objectively. The notion that our reality might be a game or an experiment raises questions about the authenticity of our life experiences. Nick Bostrom, the philosopher who popularized the simulation theory, suggests that reality as we know it may be a construct. If we're in a simulation, everything we experience, from matter to emotions, could be artificial. This forces us to reconsider fundamental concepts like time, space, and even identity. If our consciousness is just a line of code in a larger program, what does that mean for our sense of individuality and purpose? This line of thought also affects our perception of science and technology. If the universe is a simulation, then the laws of physics, chemistry, and biology are not absolute truths but rather rules set by the creators of the simulation. This suggests that what we consider reality is just a surface layer of something far more complex. In this context, science becomes the study of the game's rules, rather than the discovery of objective truth. This perspective also raises questions about ethics and morality. If our actions and choices are part of a simulation, to what extent are we truly responsible for them? If everything is predetermined by a program, then free will might be an illusion. These questions, though speculative, force us to reconsider what it means to be human in a universe that may not be as real as it seems. 10. Moral and existential consequences. Considering the possibility that we're living in a simulation has vast and profound moral and existential implications. If everything we know is an artificial creation, what does that mean for our concepts of right and wrong, good and evil? If our lives are merely an experiment, does that devalue our choices and actions, or give them a new kind of significance? The simulation theory might lead to nihilism, the idea that nothing really matters if everything is just a simulation. If our experiences and emotions are merely the result of programmed code, then perhaps suffering and joy don't carry the same weight they would in a real reality. On the other hand, this view could be seen as liberating, as it might allow us to create our own meaning and purpose, regardless of what the creators of the simulation intended. From an ethical standpoint, the idea that we live in a simulation raises questions about how we should treat each other and the world around us. If we're all characters in a simulation, the value of life could be questioned, potentially justifying unethical behavior. However, this same idea could also reinforce the importance of empathy and compassion, as if we're all stuck in the same simulation, our shared experience makes us equally valuable. Finally, the simulation theory touches on existential questions, such as the nature of the afterlife and the purpose of existence. If we're in a simulation, what happens when we die? Is our consciousness simply erased, or do we continue in another simulation or cycle of life? These questions, though speculative, force us to confront the possibilities of what it really means to exist in a universe that might not be what it seems.